Boss stood beside Hajin's bed, with black magic gathered in her hand. Her instincts repeated the same command: kill the suspicious person before he could betray her. The magnifying glass had shown emotions she could not accept: longing, responsibility, affection, trust, and sorrow for her past. To Boss, those gentle feelings were more frightening than open hostility, yet her hand refused to move. When Hajin opened his eyes and called her name, every accusation disappeared. The only words Boss managed were, "I am hungry." To understand that night, the story must return to the skill book that started everything. Hajin, Boss, Jane, and Cheuk Young entered the inner city under an uncomfortable silence. Boss had become visibly distant, but the mansion heist left no time for Hajin to discover why. Cheuk Young caused a disturbance outside the professor's mansion. While the guards rushed toward him, Jane disguised herself and Hajin as mansion soldiers and led them through the front entrance. 6 professor warriors blocked the route. Hajin could not fire without exposing the operation, so Boss entered through the shadows and subdued all 6 after draining several mana potions. They bound the professor inside a study containing thousands of books. Jane mocked the luxury surrounding one scholar while starving people collapsed outside the inner wall. For 20 minutes, they searched the shelves and collected 25 acquisition books. Jane found charge for Cheuk Young, snatch for herself, and several skills that could later be sold through the auction house. Boss discovered the book Hajin wanted most: Permanent Materialization. When she held out her hand for it back, Hajin promised to make her better equipment and placed the book in his inventory before she could refuse. The city guards arrived at levels far beyond the players. Jane and Hajin escaped by impersonating wounded soldiers, while Boss dissolved into Shadow Pool and Cheuk Young waited outside as if nothing had happened. The heist gave Hajin half of the mechanism he needed. The other half was sold in the one place he despised most: the Temple of Medea. Boss stopped Hajin before he left the group and accused him of keeping too many secrets. He promised to explain later, but she walked away with clenched teeth and ordered him not to speak to her. At Medea's temple, Hajin purchased extraction, synthesis, and a basic consolidation scroll for 15,000 TP. The price was terrible, but the Book of Truth had confirmed there was no alternative source. Inside his waiting room, Hajin learned synthesis and immediately upgraded it. The system warned that the skill was incomplete and that combining skill books had an extremely low success rate. Probability meant little to Hajin. He fused extraction with permanent materialization, and his accumulated luck forced the dangerous synthesis to succeed. The resulting normal skill occupied 2 slots. Extraction would remove an essence, materialization would give the formless a body, and permanence would prevent that body from disappearing. Hajin had chosen the combination for one reason. Stigma was his strongest weapon, but its magic normally vanished after leaving his body. This skill could make that power physical and permanent. The plan was dangerous, painful, and perfectly suited to someone whose greatest advantage came from rewriting what should have been impossible. Hajin tested the skill on the one source of magic no tower system could properly understand: Stigma itself. Hajin activated the new skill directly on the white stigma carved into his upper arm. Extraction felt as though the limb was being torn from his body, and the pain climbed through his shoulder into his skull. When the pain ended, an unpolished white crystal rested in his palm. The tower called it a pure origin mana crystal, but could not identify its 2 effects. The head administrator began watching with interest. Hajin used his smartwatch to write permanent strength and speed increases into the empty effects without spending SP. He swallowed the crystal and gained 0.05 in both statistics. Inside the tower that was already valuable, and part of the increase would remain after he returned to Earth. The success came with a limit. Hajin's body ached and exhaustion struck immediately, proving he could not manufacture crystals without restraint. Still, he had created a blank check from his own magic, a permanent resource that could become stats, equipment effects, or something even more dangerous later. Too exhausted to remain alone, Hajin carried his bed back to the Chameleon Troupe hideout, unaware that Boss was still trapped by what the magnifying glass had shown her. Boss slept in the hideout and dreamed of the world she came from, a dead land where her parents called her cursed, tried to kill her, and died by her hands when she fought to survive. Every person who later offered kindness had eventually tried to use or eliminate her. Boss survived by killing first, until a certain man offered himself as a new fence and gave her somewhere to belong. She woke drenched in sweat and reopened the record from the magnifying glass. Hajin's feelings were longing, responsibility, affection, sorrow for her past, trust, and a desire to protect her. The sorrow angered her most. Boss wondered what Hajin had investigated, why he stayed beside her, and whether his kindness hid the same purpose as every smiling snake from her past. Shadow gathered in her hand as she stood over his bed. Her mind demanded that she kill the suspicious person before betrayal arrived, but her body refused to obey. 3 years of ordinary memories interrupted the nightmare. Meals, missions, arguments, gifts, and Hajin treating her without fear. When he stirred and called her name, the killing intent vanished. Boss had countless questions, but only one foolish sentence escaped. She said she was hungry. Hajin laughed, went to the kitchen, and promised to cook something special. Boss watched his back while knives struck the cutting board and food warmed in the pan. She did not receive an explanation, but for that night, the sound of Hajin cooking was enough to silence the monster inside her. While Boss concealed a wound from her past, Chai Nayun was concealing a curse that was growing stronger every day. At the essence of the Strait hideout, Chai Nayun cooked the food she had insisted on gathering from floor 2. The same guild members who resented her delay now depended on her supplies. Kim Youngjin tried to thank her publicly and admitted that her judgment had saved the team. Nayun accepted his apology, but no longer expected praise, trust, or understanding from anyone. She quietly checked messages to Extra 7 and touched her injured left shoulder. A Banshee curse that had been level 1 the day before had already advanced to level 2. Yi Ju still lacked the magic to use healing factor, so Nayun lied and said nothing was wrong. She continued behaving normally, even though the pain made a two-handed weapon difficult to use. Medea interrupted breakfast with a new broadcast. 4 demon spires controlled the cardinal directions, and destroying them would grant TP, contribution points, and rare skill book rewards. The announcement ignited every faction in Prestige. For Nayun, it also created pressure to fight before her curse made fighting impossible. Hajin began gathering undead souls for the same competition, but his first encounter outside the city became an opportunity for Jane. While Hajin extracted souls from skeletons, Eileen mistook the process for a high-level dismantling technique. She asked the hooded stranger to process the giant boar filling her inventory. Hajin agreed after noticing Jane in the distance. While Eileen watched the boar separate cleanly into meat and hide, Jane repeatedly activated Snatch from behind her. Jane stole 989 TP, everything Eileen possessed. Hajin felt some guilt, but left the entire boar to her so she and Yi Yongha would have enough food for weeks. Eileen returned to her hideout in triumph and ordered Yi Yongha to cook. She boasted about finding a stranger with level 3 dismantling and proudly opened her inventory to check their combined budget. The number was 0. Eileen closed the inventory, opened it again, searched her pockets, and finally understood that every point had vanished. Tears rolled down her face as she whispered that her money was gone. Somewhere else in Prestige, Jane celebrated the success of her new skill. Hajin had already moved on. His next target was a level 6 demon whose cave contained the most versatile magic book on the floor. At the entrance to Gramson's level 5 cave, Hajin permanently blessed the dwarven supercar with Yggdrasil leaf. The blessing awakened a hidden function that allowed it to glide and manipulate friction. Hundreds of zombies, skeletons, ghosts, and vengeful spirits rose from the cavern floor. Hajin answered by accelerating directly into the army. The artifact ignored walls, ceilings, rough terrain, and open air. In 10 minutes, its black and gold body shattered the undead formation and raised Hajin's driving technique to level 4. A skeleton mage launched a curse beam while he was recovering. Hajin activated extraction and permanent materialization, stopped the spell before his face, and condensed it into a curse crystal. Deeper inside, Gramson waited on a throne and wasted time delivering the speech of a minor villain. Hajin changed the Desert Eagle into shotgun form and walked within effective range. The first shell pierced the demon but failed to kill him. Before Gramson could summon his creations, the second shell destroyed his heart and reduced his body to dust. The only item left behind was Demon Cunning Speech, a unique magic notebook containing quest deception, suggestive voice, and cowardly lie. With the book, Hajin could create believable false quests, hypnotize himself during training, and strengthen lies that were already plausible. It was less a weapon than a new method of controlling the tower's rules. Before Hajin could finish collecting the cave's drops, a familiar voice approached the entrance. The voice belonged to Che Nayun. She entered the cave alone with short black hair and the red crystal spear, cautiously testing the darkness for traps. Hajin watched from beyond her sight and felt guilt, sadness, and relief collide. He could not allow her to find him, so he infused Stigma into Demon Cunning Speech and activated Quest Deception. A false system quest warned that the cave contained level 4 monsters and required a party of 8. Nayun shouted in excitement, then covered the entrance with leaves and branches so no one else could steal her discovery. After she left, Hajin collected hundreds of undead remains. Repeated use raised extraction and permanent materialization to level 3 and unlocked spirit power as a new personal statistic. He refused the system's suggestion to fuse spirit power with magic power. Keeping them separate would make control harder, but it allowed his skills to function outside the tower. His spirit power gained the attribute Matter Interference, a fitting but weaker relative of Jin Sayuk's future reality manipulation. Hajin also left a level 3 longsword inside the cave for Nayun to find when she returned. Outside the cave, another force was forming, an alliance that claimed to protect ordinary players while preparing to exploit them. Back in Prestige, Hajin passed Zurahan recruiting for the Ordinary Player Alliance. The movement presented itself as resistance to guild monopolies, but Hajin knew its leadership would become corrupt and violent. The brother and sister shop had already become the most important named store outside the inner wall. Rachel spent half an hour comparing potions and equipment before carefully trying to negotiate a bulk discount. Kiri rejected her with a single firm word. Aileen stared tearfully at a magic amplification staff she could no longer afford, while players lined up for potions unavailable anywhere else at that quality. When the shop closed, Henry and Kiri revealed 7,000 TP in revenue. Hajin rewarded their growth with reading books, a business management text, and the Law of Thinking skill book. The children ran upstairs in excitement, instead of resisting the lessons. Their reaction reminded Hajin that knowledge itself had been denied to most people born outside the inner wall. Hajin used 6,000 TP to purchase an empty field. After enough demons died, the land would become the only fertile ground outside the city center. His plan was to grow food, sell it to players, and distribute part of the harvest to NPCs. If Prestige learned to sustain itself, Kim Suho might choose to break the tower's shell instead of destroying the world inside it. For that future to exist, Kim Suho first needed to enter the tower with the tools Hajin had prepared for him. On Earth, Yoon Sung-ah called Kim Suho into her office and placed a black admission ticket on the table. She had obtained it through UC-Yuk and Vast Expanse after paying an enormous discounted price. Suho admitted that he had already found a green ticket. The black ticket was still far better, allowing the hardest tutorial and 3 pieces of outside equipment. Yunsong-ah opened another box containing armor crafted by Hajin. Multiple specialists had judged it comparable to a mid-rank artifact, with a design so refined that some wanted to rate it even higher. Suho brightened immediately, then grew quiet when he heard the maker's name. He thanked Hajin through Yunsong-ah, but admitted that he would rather Hajin had come to see him. The final gift was a handwritten tutorial guide. Hajin's first page skipped formal greetings, warned Suho not to show the notes to anyone, and said he believed Suho could clear the tower even if Hajin could not. Suho read the guide with expressions that shifted between concentration and laughter. Yunsong-ah tried to peek, but he protected the notebook like a private letter. 3 years after their separation, Hajin and Suho still did not meet. Yet the armor and guide proved that Hajin had been preparing Suho's path all along. Inside Prestige, Hajin was preparing a different kind of gift for Medea's control towers, 3 grenades made from hundreds of vengeful souls. For 2 weeks, Hajin delayed other factions from challenging the strongest demons so he could preserve first place in Medea's ranking. When his preparations were complete, he brought Boss, Jain, and Kyuk Jungyong outside the city. Each grenade contained hundreds of undead souls compressed through synthesis and given an ignition attribute by Stigma. Despite their size, Hajin claimed one would be enough for an entire demon spire. Boss carved a black lotus into the ground as their signature. The mark would announce that the Chameleon Troupe had entered the tower's public conflict. Hajin threw the first grenade with the perfect mechanics of a master sharpshooter. For a moment, nothing happened, and even his companions doubted him. Then a circular shock wave expanded, and the entire tower disappeared inside a chain of explosions. It took only 3 seconds for the structure to collapse. Over 3 days, the group destroyed the eastern, western, and northern towers. Hajin earned massive contribution and unlocked the achievement Terrorist for destroying multiple buildings with a single blast. The achievement granted the bomber trait, increasing explosive power, and allowing Hajin to place an explosion attribute on valuable objects. One more permanent advantage had been added to the arsenal waiting for Jin Sayuk. After destroying the towers, the group returned to the most comfortable hideout in Prestige, where Boss had discovered a new form of entertainment. Hajin had transformed the purchased building into a level 5 hideout with masterpiece beds, sofas, a bathroom, a training room, and a stolen air purifier. Its recovery bonuses surpassed every other base in Prestige. Jane collapsed happily onto a sofa while Boss browsed the community. Hajin discovered that she was reading a serialized web novel and had even donated 75 TP to choose a character name. Kyuk Jungyong asked for the most dangerous enemy in Prestige. Hajin named the Banshee and warned everyone to report its curse immediately because it could follow a player through death and resurrection. Jane demanded food before Hajin left, and even Kyuk Jungyong wanted another training session. Hajin cooked a level 3 boar steak, then returned to his waiting room. The Manin egg had grown again. Hajin held it beneath the artificial sunlight for half an hour before activating his return to Earth. Behind him, Boss continued reading in the home he had built. Neither of them knew that the second tower wave was bringing 2 people whose hatred centered on Hajin. One of those people was Jin Sayuk, and the first person she encountered in Tutorial City was Kim Suho. In the highest difficulty Tutorial City, Kim Suho lived carefully using Hajin's guide. He saved enough TP, learned the correct prices, and discovered hidden opportunities because the guide told him direction mattered more than speed. At the city outskirts, he encountered Jin Sayuk sitting on a bench in ruined clothes and a terrible mood. Suho offered food, but she told him exactly where he could put it. Sayuk said Suho had fallen to number 237 on her kill list. Even after everyone ahead of him died, he would only rise to second place. Suho immediately understood that the person in first place was Hajin. When Sayuk admitted she wanted him dead before even learning his name, Suho's hand moved toward his sword. Both released killing intent, but Suho stopped. He remembered Hajin's past battles and chose a sharper weapon than steel. He asked whether Sayuk had not already lost to him. The mention of the coin and her humiliation distorted Sayuk's face. Suho calmly added that the same result would happen again because Hajin was at least as strong as he was. Sayuk dismissed him, but the unease she had felt since receiving the black ticket finally gained a shape. Somewhere ahead, Hajin was waiting inside the tower she had entered to hunt him. While Suho and Sayuk faced each other inside the tutorial, Hajin returned home and discovered that Evendel no longer waited for him alone. Hajin returned to his apartment after 4 weeks and found a tent in the living room. Evendel had become the leader of a small group with Haiyang, and a younger child from the neighborhood. She was happy to see him, but quickly returned to her friends. Hajin felt unnecessary for a moment, then smiled because her growing independence was exactly what he had once wanted. A message from Yu Yonha led him to a neighborhood playground covered in autumn leaves. She sat alone on a swing without her usual limousine, visibly exhausted and troubled. She had completed the investigation Hajin requested, but warned that some information could be spoken and some could not. She offered him a choice between the entire truth and the part she was able to reveal. Hajin chose the partial truth. He told her that whatever she was hiding could wait until she was ready, even though he had no way to know which details she would remove. The swing creaked through a long silence. When Yu Yonha finally raised her head, she began with one question. Had Hajin ever heard of the Chameleon Troupe? The name struck the organization Hajin had chosen as family and the past of the body, whose life he had inherited. Yu Yonha described the Chameleon Troupe as a hidden organization, powerful enough to rival vast expanse. She believed the group had carried out the attack connected to Hajin's lost family. She gave him 2 likely names, Kim Yuan and Shin Yian. Both were believed to have died during the Kwangho evacuation shelter incident. Yuanha also produced an old portrait of the girl who had delivered infant Chondong to an orphanage. Only half the face was visible, and 20 years had passed, making identification nearly impossible. Hajin pretended not to know the Chameleon Troupe and kept his expression empty. Inside, the name of his current family collided with the evidence of Chundong's murdered parents. Back in his room, he studied the portrait again. The dangerous beauty, the shape of the face, and the age all pointed toward one conclusion. The young girl was Boss. The evidence did not prove that Boss personally killed Chundong's parents. It proved that she had been present and that she had delivered the surviving child to safety. Hajin told himself that Chundong's past was not his own, yet the distinction no longer felt clean. Hangdong was the life that vanished because Hajin entered this world, and the life Hajin had become. Looking at the unfamiliar names of those parents, Hojin quietly admitted that Chundong had never been an insignificant extra at all. Hajin carried the revelation in silence. Yu Yanha returned home carrying the weight of everything she had deliberately left unsaid. Yu Yanha returned to an empty home and called for parents she knew were absent. She wanted family precisely because she had just concealed the guilt of Hajin's past to protect her own. She tried to resume work, but self-disgust overwhelmed her. Yuena had excluded her father and Che Juchul from the story, smiled when Hajin stopped asking, and felt relieved that his anger was not directed at her. She vomited until blood appeared, washed repeatedly, and answered a call from her secretary as though nothing had happened. The government had rejected another proposal under pressure connected to Che Juchul. A second report revealed another spy had copied part of her monster database. Years of betrayal convinced Yonha that legal methods and forgiveness only encouraged the next attack. She ordered Falling Blossom to handle the traitor and declared that she could no longer forgive such acts. The principle replacing mercy was simple: kill or be killed. After the call, Yonha collapsed against her desk and tried to believe every storm eventually ended. She was too exhausted to know whether she was becoming stronger or merely colder. She crawled into the used bed Hajin had sent her. The mattress still carried a faint trace of cigarette smoke, but its comfort finally allowed her to sleep. Inside Prestige, another part of Hajin's hidden past surfaced when Chik Junyoung met Chae Nayoon outside her guild's hideout. After a successful control tower raid, Chae Nayoon waited outside her guild hideout and asked whether Fenrir had appeared among the rankers. Her fixation had worsened since the curse damaged her arm. She collided with Cheok Soo-myung, the giant who had guarded Hajin's stall in Tutorial City. Both recognized each other, and Cheok learned her name from the essence of the Strait badge. When Nayoon asked why he knew her, Tia casually mentioned a djinn who had once impressed him by claiming he killed her mother. The words destroyed her restraint. Nayoon punched him with her uninjured hand, and when he caught her fist, she struck his face with a flying kick powerful enough to release a shockwave. Cheok enjoyed the attack. He refused the red crystal spear and 2000 TP she offered for information, saying he did not use weapons and did not need money from an injured future opponent. Nayoon apologized, changed to respectful speech, and begged for the truth. Chek gave her his nickname instead and told her to challenge him whenever she wanted. He walked away delighted to add another strong person to his list. Behind him, Nayoon's body finally failed, and she collapsed as her guild members shouted her name. While Nayoon collapsed under a curse and a new clue, Hajin returned to Prestige with no intention of remaining on the third floor. Hajin returned to Prestige after closing the Truth Agency for a short break and arranging for Park Soo-yuk to purchase a special artifact when it appeared at auction. He kept his plans secret from Boss Jane and Cheok Young. After learning the possible truth about Chundong's parents, Hajin did not know how to stand before the Chameleon Troupe without revealing what he felt. Even so, he believed his preparations were complete. His equipment, skills, spirit power, bomber trait, and knowledge of the early floors gave him absolute confidence that he could kill Jin Sayuk. Hajin entered the elevator, descending to floor 2. The journey would take 4 hours, so he removed the manin egg from his waiting room and wrapped it carefully in a blanket. The egg had grown from the size of a chicken egg to the size of an ostrich egg. Hajin brought it because the creature inside seemed close to hatching. A system alert announced that an unknown player had already reached floor 5. Hajin noted the danger of the 9th floor, then dismissed every distant problem. For now, only Jin Sayuk mattered. Across chapters 173 to 178, Hajin stole the tower's best early skill books, turned Stigma into permanent crystals, built spirit power, obtained the bomber trait, and changed prestige through a shop, education, and farmland. Boss nearly attacked him after discovering the tenderness hidden in his thoughts, while Yu Yanha revealed that the Chameleon Troupe was connected to the deaths of Chundong's parents and then broke under the truth she concealed. Nayoon gained a clue about her mother's killer, Suho entered with Hajin's guide, and Jin Sayuk placed Hajin at the top of her kill list. Now Hajin is descending alone to floor 2, carrying the unhatched Moonin and preparing to strike first.